the master, the monk. Okay, we can do better than that. The Rani. Now there's a renegade Time Lord we can talk about. A brilliant, dangerous mind. Even an ego like the 6th Doctor could see that. Cleverer than any of us, he said. She's not into playing mind games with male counterparts. No, she's on her own wavelength. Her own dimension, even. Manipulating biology like clay, tampering with the universe as we know it, and without a hint of remorse. To her, the ends undoubtedly justify the means. But who exactly is the Rani? A renegade Time Lord? No, she's a bit more than that. A genius gone too far? Well, yes and no. You think you ever figured out? Well, you don't. The Rani is one of the most mysterious figures in Doctor Who history. She's not driven by hunger for power, but her complete disregard for morality. She's not just an amoral scientist, but a figure from the Doctor's early beginnings. You may have predicted her return. You may think you've got her all figured out. But May 24th is beckoning. And so too does the question, who is the Rani? Hello everyone, what a time it is to be a Doctor Who fan. Welcome to the 3rd installment in the Doctor Who Mystery series. After so much love for the deep dive into the Midnight Entity, I decided I had to bring the series back with a bang. A pop, even. The Interstellar Song Contest has just dropped, and it's a bit late for spoilers, but yes, the Rani has returned, and with the 2-part finale only days away, I figured now would be the perfect time to revisit her character. Before we get into this, please make sure to like and subscribe. Today is a very special installment. You see, it's the first Doctor Who Mysteries that is going to have a next time trailer at the end of the video, so you'll want to stick around to see that. For now, let's dive into the mystery. The Rani herself is not inherently a mystery, but it's worth refreshing ourselves about her history in the show. And to be fair, Stephen Moffat did at one point say, no one knows who the Rani is. They all know who the Master is, they know the Daleks, they probably know who Davros is, but they don't know who the Rani is. For this investigation, I'm going to be going back into the Rani's timeline, so we'll be dipping in and out of the televised show. I'll even be pushing the limits of what fans consider canon. I should also say that unlike other Doctor Who mysteries, there's going to be a lot of cut down information. Look online, there's so much contradictory evidence about the Rani, so I'm just going to do my best with it. Without further ado, let's dive into the truth about the Rani. For the Rani, it all started on Gallifrey, with the first of her 4 known incarnations. Interestingly, she's actually the same age as the Doctor. As youngsters, her and the first Doctor even played hide and seek. It's not really relevant, I just thought it was a funny fact. Now, the Rani was a later title, with her initial name being Ushas, that is, according to Divided Loyalties, and A Brief History of the Time Lords, 2 pieces of media which you may remember from a previous Doctor Who Mysteries video. As with the Doctor and the Master, at age 8, the Rani was taken to steer into the untempered schism for the Time Lord selection process.
And some would go mad.
The Rani was amongst those driven insane. During her time in the Time Lord Academy, the Rani was rumoured to be in the Decca, a group of rebellious Time Lords. This included the first Doctor, the Rani, obviously, Kroschi, who we know as the Master, Mortimus, otherwise known as the Meddling Monk, Drax, who appeared in the 4th Doctor story The Armageddon Factor, and then Vansel, Rallon, Jalpax and Millennia, all of whom are from the expanded media. And the 10th member of the group is a character well known to this series, Magnus. Without stirring up controversy, I'm going to assume for the sake of this video that Magnus is the War Chief. Anyway, in the Decca, the Rani was considered the smartest. As her time in the academy went on, things became a bit steamy. The Doctor and Mortimus both asked the Rani out, but got rejected. Although during this, the Rani was having an affair with Magnus. So, if Magnus was in his Edward Brayshaw form, or whatever form he was in, he did well for himself getting Kate O'Mara there. The Rani was good at everything, but she was particularly strong in neurochemistry. As the Doctor, Master, and Rani graduated from the academy, the Rani even turned up to the party with a giant rat. Anyway, the Doctor and the Master eventually left Gallifrey. The Rani stayed behind, harbouring a contempt for not just those two, but for all Time Lords. Time progressed, and quite a bizarre accident occurred. In an experiment, she accidentally created monstrous mice who attacked the Time Lord President and his cat, and this ended up resulting in her exile. And this is where we get past all of the background stuff and into the ridiculous plans and iconic outfits. Before we move on, what we can take from this background check is the fact that the Rani was very clever, a tad rebellious, but not an inherent renegade like the Doctor and the Master. Perhaps a large reason why she would so often look down on them in the televised show. Taking a TARDIS, the Rani settled on a planet called Mea Goria, which is a bit of a crap name, but anyway, she experimented with the brains of natives, a perfect application of her neurochemistry skills. But they became aggressive and restless. She needed a chemical to tame them. In fact, it could render the inhabitants compliant. But where could she get this material? Earth. Now, before the events of the Mark of the Rani take place, the Rani actually ventured quite far back into Earth history. I'll quote the 6th Doctor here when I say her TARDIS contained the embryos of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. She must have popped back to the Cretaceous age and picked up a few. By the way, while we're in the Rani's TARDIS, look around. I must say I love the design. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Also, by this point, the Rani was actually the second most wanted criminal in the galaxy. Who was the first, you might ask? You're about to find out. Now, the chemical the Rani needed to control the natives was found in human brains, essentially controlling sleep. If she could extract it, then that would enable her to subdue those on Mea Goria. However, extracting the chemicals from humans began to render them too aggressive and restless. On her quest to get enough chemical, the Rani visited the Trojan War, the Dark Ages, the American Revolutionary War, and the Luddite riots of Killingsworth in the 19th century. It was here that she reluctantly teamed up with the most wanted criminal in the galaxy, the Master. The Doctor managed to arrive. What a nice reunion. Only problem is the Master was acting like a complete idiot, and the Doctor was an egotistical maniac who managed to stop the day. Oh no. He trapped both the Rani and the Master in a time spillage. What exactly that means, I don't know, and I don't really care. But the point is, it seems as if it's lights out for the Rani. State of Change takes place shortly after the Mark of the Rani. Whilst the Master pulled some cop-out excuse to get away with the Rani's TARDIS, she and the Doctor found themselves on Terra Nova, an alternate Earth. By the end of that story, the Rani managed to create a new TARDIS console room, explaining the aesthetic difference in its next televised appearance. The Rani's travels took her to the planet Coturia, where she posed under the name Lania. She aimed to study phasing, a process which she believed could help her get control of regeneration. She genetically altered pterodactyls to collect data and got engaged to a local named Jonos. The wedding failed because phasing required true love, which she was faking. Wonder what else she was faking, but it was during the downfall that the Doctor noted a rare glimpse of emotion when she begged for her research to be saved. Oh Jesus, who writes this? On Tetraferiabus, the Rani allied with the Tetraps and invaded Lacutia. She also was kidnapping scientific geniuses like Einstein, planning to use strange matter to build a time manipulator to correct errors in the universal timeline, regardless of the cost to Lacurshan and Tetrap life. During this, the Rani decided she needed the Doctor, and so she attacked the TARDIS with highly concentrated radiation beams, deadly to Time Lords. This triggered the 6th Doctor's regeneration into his 7th incarnation, of course played by Sylvester McCoy. The TARDIS arrived on Lacursha with the newly regenerated Doctor and Mel on board. By drugging the Doctor, the Rani managed to pull off a ridiculous disguise as Mel Bush, who we all know from her involvement with the RTD2 era. I'm going to take the opportunity to once again say, as I do in a lot of my videos, Mel really went from one of the worst companions to one of the best characters in the Whoniverse. I absolutely love Bonnie Langford nowadays. Back on topic, and after tricking the Doctor into helping with her plan, the Rani used him and other kidnapped geniuses to power a massive artificial brain. Her goal? To create a lightweight alternative to strange matter for her time manipulator. Once it worked, she launched a missile, only for the Doctor to infect the brain with his unstable mind, sabotaging everything. Realizing she planned to betray them too, Uruk and the Tetraps trapped her in her own TARDIS. God, that was one of them poor 80s plots. Pip and Jane Baker, what were they doing? Ridiculous. Although I don't hate that story as much as other people, it's just... Anyway, Uruk, I should mention, was the head Tetrap. He was the one who collected the Doctor from the TARDIS. I always wondered what his reaction to their regeneration would have been. I'm sure that would have been quite funny. In The Rani Reaps the Whirlwind, the Tetraps faced a food shortage, and Uruk ended up getting the Rani sentenced to death, unless she could solve their food crisis. Given 4 test subjects to experiment on, she ended up escaping with them, vowing to seek revenge on the Tetraps and reclaim her TARDIS. In a short story called Rescue, the Rani travelled to DV Akrol 8, my favourite, where she saved a character called Syrian from a group of Cybermen. Whilst he pretty much became her servant doing God knows what, he did learn the basics of operating the TARDIS console. Now, given the audio I just talked about ended with the Rani not having a TARDIS, by the sounds of it, I'm not quite sure how she gained one in between these two stories, so that's a mini unsolved mystery for you. Right. Now, we reach the controversial part of the Rani's history. Ultimately, this comes down to what sort of fan you are. Are you a purist who watches only the finest television productions? Are you ready for anything? Do you not give a toss? Regardless of what you think, it's time to enter the events of Dimensions in Time. An absolutely mental piece of television. For the sake of the video, I'm going to treat it as canon. I am aware some people pretend it doesn't even exist, so if you're that offended by Dimensions in Time, then just skip to that time and you don't have to hear me talk about it. During this adventure, the Rani planned to control galactic revolution by collecting a menagerie of life forms. The last specimen she required was human, but knowing the Doctor would stand in the way, she attempted to capture his incarnations. And in fairness, she got both the first and second Doctor pickled in time like gherkins in a jar. What the hell were they thinking with that dialogue? Moving on, the Rani trapped the rest of the Doctor's incarnations in a time loop at Albert Square, and she was even forced to unleash her alien specimens in one of the cheesiest sequences I think I've ever seen. She then mistakenly captured Romana too, thinking she was human, and the Doctor used the mix-up to overload the system, causing the Rani's TARDIS to be sucked into the time tunnel. One comic later depicted the Rani as taking up gardening in her experiments, but it went wrong and she created these monstrous plants that began attacking, and during this she even bumped into the 10th Doctor and Rose, but she managed to get away fairly easily. And that's it, I'm afraid. That's all I've got from you on the finished timeline. I don't know what stopped me writing, but I can guess. The Rani's regenerated into her second incarnation, and that too is an unsolved mystery. In reality, the character was going to be brought back in 2014 with the brilliant Kate O'Mara, but unfortunately in March 2014 she passed away. Big Finish tell a story through Nicholas Briggs that her agent insisted that the Rani continue with a different actor, And that happened because Siobhan Redmond replaced her, and she played the second incarnation of the Rani in Big Finish audios. I haven't listened to any of Siobhan Redmond's audios, but I've heard she's just as cunning, ruthless, and immoral as the original Rani, so that's good to hear. Despite the recast, though, she only appeared in 2 audios, and this is largely down to issues with the Pip and Jane Baker estate. God, the amount of problems they face with the estates of writers these days. Honestly. The first audio was called The Rani Elite, where the Rani posed as Professor Baxton at a galactic college, secretly experimenting on top students to build a bio-digital brain interface. Her goal? To reverse engineer chaos theory and manipulate events. The Doctor exposed her, and she fell through a trap. Whilst this happened, she smugly hinted at her role in his next regeneration. This was, of course, the 6th Doctor that encountered her, so wibbly wobbly timey wimey for their interactions. After this came Planet of the Rani. The Rani was imprisoned at the Tech Aurora Penitentiary, but eventually became its governor. Given Mrs. Flood calls herself the governor in Lucky Day, I found this rather interesting. Moving on, the Rani used the prison to power a time corridor back to Miasami Agoria, where she found her only successful experiment, Raj Kanu, ruling the planet. After being put on trial and failing to show remorse, she tried to kill Kanu and escaped in a hidden TARDIS pod. I want to point out that since this is the final Rani appearance before we get into all of the Mrs. Flood stuff, there are actually quite a few links that could be made. And with all of the meta elements in play, we might even get an incredible link to the Siobhan Redmond incarnation of the Rani in the upcoming finale. Before we move to the Anita Dobson incarnation, which I must admit is quite weird to say now that it's official, we've also got to talk about if the Rani had any involvement with the Time War. Well, despite the Doctor post-Time War constantly insisting all the Time Lords had died out, the Rani clearly survived. Even after this, it looks like she survived the raising of Gallifrey. How exactly did any of this happen? I'm sure the answers will come in the finale. But my guess is that maybe around the time of the 13th Doctor and Spyfall Master events, the Rani regenerated. She went under the alias of Mrs. Flood and went to Earth. Perhaps used a Fog Watch to become human, just like the Master did in the face of Gallifrey's destruction. Now that we've explored the main history of the Rani, I'm going to refresh you with all of the major Mrs. Flood appearances. I'll also speculate a little bit and wrap up the video with that next time trailer. She appears quite a bit in the church on Ruby Road, and seems fairly interested with the TARDIS even before seeing it take off. Once the takeoff happens, from here she starts to become the Mrs. Flood we know, fourth wall breaking and all. So perhaps it's like the Master in Utopia, having sort of hints when he's Professor Yana, and then remembering who he is, and then returning to his true self. Mrs. Flood doesn't appear again until 73 yards, but we're going to go to Space Babies, where the Rani does get name dropped. Given Poppy will be returning, and the Rani's mentioned in that story, I reckon there's going to be some links there. In 73 yards, she claims the whole being on the phone with the woman thing with Ruby and Carla is nothing to do with her. So I reckon we could even be getting some answers to 73 yards in the finale. In the Legend of Ruby Sunday, Mrs. Flood says she is hiding herself away, again relating to the whole idea of the Fog Watch. She talks about a storm coming, and he waits no more, of course relating to Sutek. In Season 2, we find out she's Belinda's neighbour. And it's around now that she actually starts following the Doctor and Belle through time and space. In Lux, she talks about May 24th, the show will end. In The Well, she inquires about the Vindicator. In Lucky Day, she is of course the Governor. In the story and the engine, we see a glimpse of her in Belinda's past. As we know, she is in the crowd for the song contest. Of course, everything goes horribly wrong with Kid and the attack of the song contest. But it's all good because Gary and Mike revive her. But actually it's not all good because the Rani suffers a double brainstem freeze. Hate when those happen. And this triggers a bi-generation, leading into the reveal of the fourth known Rani incarnation, played by Archie Panjabi, who I thought was excellent, despite only being there for about a minute and a half. But all of the fourth wall breaking and disguises. It's strange. I could imagine the John Sim or Anthony Ainley Master doing this, but we're talking about the Rani, and based on Kaito Mara's straight portrayal in the classic series, I'm not convinced. Remember, she's not the one obsessed with the Doctor and playing mind games with him. She always disregarded him. The fact she's focusing on him, that she wants revenge? What did the Doctor do? And that brings us to the present. I've got to be honest, I've learned the important truth. The Rani is amoral, cunning. She believes that the end always justifies the means. She had contempt for Time Lords. Her brilliant mind was acknowledged even by egos such as the Tremist Master and the Sixth Doctor. She was driven by her fascination for research and neurochemistry. But all of this meta stuff? Wanting revenge for the Doctor? Why? In all of their interactions, she never despised him on such a level to devise a boundary-spinning master plan. There's a quote I found from a guy called Mark Donaldson, which I think is very important to note. The Rani didn't have the Master's obsession with the Doctor. She was never particularly interested in the Doctor and the Master's game. He is exactly right. It does seem as if they are fundamentally changing the Rani. Will she become a female Master as we had always feared would happen? Or will the production team do better than that? It really could go either way. Part of the unholy trinity, it seems as if she really is set to wreak havoc in the upcoming finale. This was not an unsolved mystery like the previous installments, but it was certainly a useful refresher. But hey, I can declare this a mystery solved. The Rani is a fellow Time Lord to the Doctor. Perhaps they were once united by their frustration with Time Lords in the Time Lord Academy, but they were later driven apart by their differences. I will admit that there are two small unsolved mysteries surrounding the Rani. How did she always manage to have a TARDIS? But also, how did she regenerate from Kato Mara to Siobhan Redmond? Those are two mysteries you can figure out if you want. Throughout the Rani's dangerous experiments, the Doctor was always there to thwart her plans. However, she did one-up him in time in the Rani, as she triggered his regeneration from his 6th to 7th incarnation. The Rani as we know her has not been seen for over 30 years, but now, after 2 seasons of teasing, she's finally back. And she's out for revenge. Regardless of what you think about her return, I'm sure we can all agree this is going to be a fascinating finale. Thank you so much for joining me on this investigation. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I've got to say that 500 subscriber special, it's recorded, it's mostly edited, so apologies for how long that has taken to get out. But anyway, congratulations on making it to the end of the video. Let me know if you enjoy the following next time trailer. Perhaps they could become a regular inclusion. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you very soon. The Time War. A battle for all creation. So deadly that even the Master ran away. A genocide which the Doctor dared not look back on out of shame. Locked away forever. Impossible to enter, impossible to escape. And yet, something broke through. The only Doctor Who character to break time itself. Emergency temporal shift. Dalek Khan. The last child of Skaro. He shattered the time lock, and no one knows how. He saw time unravel. Every path. Every end. It wasn't joy. It wasn't cruelty. It was survival.